Hello, everyone. It's Chrissy Scivicque with eatyourcareer.com, helping you create a nourishing professional life. Welcome to our free webinar for the month of July 2017. I personally cannot believe that we are deep in the middle of July. And that means that we are halfway through the year. And it has gone by so quickly for me. I'm sure it's gone by fast for you as well. But I'm glad that we're meeting once again. And today we are talking about resume writing best practices. I am going to be revealing some of my own personal secrets as a professional resume writer. I'm going to pause for just 1 minute and make sure that everyone can see me and hear me before I jump into our content for today's session. So if you can both hear and see me, I would love it if you would type the word yes into the chat menu, and that just lets me know I'm not talking to myself. Looks like we have a great group of people who are joining us from all over the country and also outside of the country. We've got some folks from Canada on. We've got people from, and I'm just seeing lots of yeses now. Fantastic. You can all see me and hear me. I appreciate that. I also want to make sure that you all have downloaded your handout for today's session. So don't forget to do that. I have put the link to your handout in the chat menu, so you can go and grab that in case you haven't had the opportunity to do so yet. All right, great. It looks like most people are not having any trouble seeing or hearing me. If you have any sort of an echo, you can always just reload the webinar system, and sometimes that'll take care of any issues you're having. All right, everyone, just checking to make sure we're good. Okay. It looks like we are fantastic. So we are here to talk about resume writing best practices. For those of you who don't know me, if this is your first time joining a free webinar with eatyourcareer.com, I want to welcome you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to attend this session. I absolutely recognize that that's an honor, that you're gifting me with your time, and I like to respect that by making sure that I deliver a ton of value and some really good information in the hour that we spend together. I am a certified career coach. I've been doing that since 2009. So a big part of the work that I do is around resume writing, best practices for optimizing, for getting through online screening systems, formatting strategies, all sorts of cool stuff is involved in resume writing. So my goal today is to just simplify some of the big things that professional resume writers are looking at and what hiring managers and recruiters are looking for when they scan over your resume. Also, for those of you who are not aware, I am also a corporate trainer. So I specialize in professional development and career advancement. I also have a special training program called Elevate Admins, which is specifically for administrative professionals. So I'm a former executive assistant myself, and I have a deep love and appreciation for administrative professionals. So I know I tend to have a lot of admins who join these sessions. I want to welcome you, as well as everyone, regardless of what position you're in. I think you're going to get a lot out of today's session. Thanks, Susan, for copying and pasting that link back into the chat menu, keeping it right up front for people. I really appreciate that. All right, so the first thing I want to do is just talk a little bit about today's session and how it's different from our past sessions. I know that we've been doing these free webinars through the Career Resource Library now for about 7 months. We're here in July, and I'm using a new system called Webinar Jam, which I think is working pretty well. But I wanted to just kind of switch things up a little bit this month for a number of different reasons. So in the past, we have been using slides. I've been showing you some pictures and some graphics on the screen while I talk over them. And then I jump back on video a couple times throughout the session to answer questions and just talk with you face to face. Last time we did that, I just asked everyone if you liked that or if you wanted to try something a little bit different and do a handout instead. And it sounded to me like the feedback was pretty overwhelmingly in favor of the handout. So that's why we are doing a handout in today's session. I'm not doing slides, and I think that the technology supports the video live streaming a little bit better than slides. So that's why I've decided against that. If in the future you really feel like you're missing out on something by not having those slides, just let me know. I'm happy to bring them back at any time. These are free webinars, so I like to streamline the process as much as possible. And I think that handouts really are, they're a little bit easier for me. They're more interactive for you. And I think it would be great if we all got in that rhythm and you enjoyed it. I'd love to keep with the handout concept and just talking to you directly on video. So I will be talking to you. We'll go through the handout together. And I believe that that will take us probably about 40 minutes. I also want to jump on. I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to show you my own personal resume. I want to show you my resume because it's the one that I am most comfortable talking about. I am most comfortable sharing with the public, but I also have other resume samples for you if you're interested in just seeing different formats and people who have different career paths as well. So on the last page of your handout, I've put some information about where you can find those other resume samples. But I'll show you my resume before we jump into questions at the end of the session, and I'm going to try to leave hopefully about 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes to answer all of your questions, because I've found that most people show up to a resume session with some very specific questions of their own. I want to make sure that I can answer those for you. So go ahead and type those into the chat menu at any point in time, and I will address them at various points throughout today's session. Okay, so I hope that you all have your handout at this point. We're going to go ahead and jump into talking about the things that it has on it. Now, the first thing that I want to talk about is the fact that I am a huge fan of being proactive. A lot of you know that I recently wrote a book. It was published last year, and it's called The Proactive Professional. So that's how much I believe in the concept of doing the right things today to set yourself up for success tomorrow. And when it comes to resume writing, you have to be proactive. I really can't emphasize that enough. I've seen it over and over and over again with my clients that people put resume writing and resume revision on the back burner, and it doesn't really move to the front burner until there's a specific reason. And sometimes that reason is something, bad has happened. You've been laid off, or it looks like you're going to inevitably be back in the job market. And so you're trying really anxiously to try to spruce up your resume at the last minute. Or it happens because something really good is on the horizon. You have an exciting opportunity that you want to take advantage of. And then you pull out your resume and you dust it off, and you're trying desperately to make it look fabulous for this awesome opportunity. But you're trying to move too quickly because you want to take advantage of that opportunity, and you don't have enough time to really dive into it and make sure you're incredibly happy with it, feel confident about it, and that it's the best it can possibly be. So if you're proactive and you are constantly revising your resume, updating it on a quarterly basis, making sure it's really all spruced up, then it's there. It's waiting for you. No matter what happens, good, bad, or in between, you can always just grab that resume and you can take advantage of whatever opportunities may present themselves. So please, please don't put this off. Use this webinar as your opportunity to really jump into a resume revision, especially if you haven't done it in a little while. All right, so I'm going to just pause here. I want to make sure. It looks like one person is saying that the link for the other resumes is not working. And so the other resume samples are at eatyourcareer.com/resume-samples. That page should work. There's no reason it wouldn't work. If you are having trouble accessing the links from the PDF itself, you can always type the link in directly into your internet browser, or you can copy and paste it. Either one of those should work. But all of the links should be working. I tested them out this morning. All right. So I also want to note here that at the top of your handout, it says modern resume principles because we are talking about the latest and greatest concepts for upgrading your resume. These are things that tend to change on a regular basis. You know, resume writing trends kind of ebb and flow. If you haven't written a resume in a little while, you know, if you've been happily employed for the last 10 years and you haven't really looked at resume writing trends, you're probably going to be shocked at how different things are. Things are constantly changing. And I always like to tell people, you know, it's probably not your job to stay up to date on those trends. It's my job. I'm a career coach. That's what I do. I spend every single day really just kind of soaking in all of this kind of information. So I'm always up to date on the latest trends in something like resume writing, job interviewing, writing a cover letter, creating a portfolio. That's my wheelhouse, my areas of expertise. You don't have to waste your time trying to understand everything and always stay up to date. Hit me up. That's why I'm here. I'm here to help you out with this. And I'm going to be sharing with you the most important things that have changed in the recent past. All right, so back to your handout. The first thing it says is that the two most important elements of the modern resume are, number one, accomplishment focused. So your first fill in the blank is the word accomplishment. Modern resumes are focused on accomplishments, not job duties or job responsibilities. This is a shift from the past. The second key element of a modern resume is that they are keyword rich. So your fill in the blank is keyword. So keyword rich and accomplishment focused. Keywords are new because we have all kinds of new technology that organizations are using in the hiring process. And keywords are a big kind of fundamental piece of that puzzle. And you need to understand how those work. So those are the two key elements that we're really focused on in today's session. And then we'll also talk about some of the biggest mistakes that people tend to make. This is from my own personal experience. The resumes that I see from my coaching clients, these are the most common problems that come up. So I've just shared those with you also in your handout. We'll go over those at the end as well. All right, so let's talk about accomplishments here. Before I do that, I'm just going to jump into chat really quickly. Okay, it looks like for people who are having problems accessing the link, it looks like some people are able to access it and some people aren't able to access the links in the handout. So please just type them into your internet browser. It looks like someone was saying that Google Chrome is a good browser to be using because it works perfectly. There shouldn't be any problem with any of those links. So I will just double check everything when we're off the webinar, and I'll make sure that I include direct links on the web page where this video is replaying. So that'll take care of any sort of problems that anyone happens to be having. All right, let's talk here about accomplishments and what they actually are. So it says here on your worksheet that accomplishments are anything that deliver value to your client's team or organization. So your fill in the blank is the word value. That's what accomplishments are all about. It's all about those things that you do that deliver a direct and measurable impact to the business that you're serving. So that's what we're looking for. We are looking for the things that you do and have done, things like, developing new processes or improving processes, increasing sales, any of the activities that you do that are contributing to the bottom line at your business. I've broken it down for you right beneath that in about the middle of the first page. It says 6 ways to add value are. And you've got a bunch of fill in the blanks. So let's talk about these 6 direct ways to add value. The first one is you can save money for your organization. Saving money. There are a variety of different ways that you can save money, even if you are not like directly involved in purchasing. You know, people who are purchasing, they can negotiate contracts and they can identify some really specific dollar savings that they're able to, direct to their actions. But you can find a variety of different ways to save money by perhaps enhancing different processes or procedures that are having an impact down the road on money. So think about saving money. The second way to add value is to make money. The third way is to improve the quality of products or services. So your fill in the blank is quality. The next one is improve the efficiency with which products and services are produced or delivered. So your fill in the blank is efficiency. And then the last two, you can fix a problem or you can prevent a problem. So your last two fill-ins there, fix or prevent. Those are the 6 things that you should be looking at when you're reviewing your employment history and you're thinking about everything that you've achieved in the workplace. I want you to be running it through this filter and trying to see all of the different ways that you've added value in these ways, because these are very tangible and measurable ways that you deliver value. All right, so when we are thinking about putting together a resume and we're talking about the fact that this should be accomplishment focused, what we're really talking about is writing our bullet points for our employment history in a way that really focuses on what we have done and the impact that's had and any sort of measurement that we can associate with that. So beneath where it talks about the value, the 6 ways to add value, there's a statement that says accomplishment statements should be written in the following format. So an accomplishment statement would just be one of the bullet points on your resume for your employment history. And the format is the ARM format, ARM, so it's easy to remember. And that stands for action, result, metric. Action, result, metric. These are the 3 essential components. I find that a lot of people, first off, they don't know this formula. This formula will change everything for you if you really follow it. But a lot of people will focus on, they'll put something in a bullet point on their resume that really isn't addressing any action that they took. It's not talking about a specific result or impact on the organization. There's no number associated with it. They're just kind of putting in there a thing that they've done or that they do. So for example, I'm in the training field. So if I had a bullet point on my resume that just said advanced curriculum design, that doesn't talk about any action that I've done. It doesn't talk about the results, and it doesn't give me a metric. It just says advanced curriculum design. So when we're talking about accomplishment statements, I should be owning that. So I should be saying, that I utilize advanced curriculum design to, and then I talk about the result. What do I use that skill to do? How have I delivered value by using my advanced curriculum design skill? So again, I'm going to show you examples of this. So I know we're talking very pie in the sky right now, but this is an essential formula to understand: action, result, metric. Numbers are so important. The more that you can cite numbers, the better on your resume. So I'm talking about percentages, a percentage of productivity that you were able to increase, or an inefficiency that you were able to remove, attaching some sort of number to that, dollar amounts. As much as you can cite specific numbers, put them in there. I want to be clear too that estimates are perfectly fine. I know that when you're looking back on a position that you held maybe 7 or 8 years ago, you're thinking, I don't have that information. I don't have that kind of data just available at my fingertips. That's okay. It is perfectly fine to estimate your metrics as long as it's defensible. if when you're sitting in an interview, the interviewer says, this is really interesting. It says here that you improved productivity by 20%. How did you get that figure? Then you can say, well, you know what? When I first started working on this process, it took me 25 hours to complete this project. And by the time I was done improving the processes associated with it, it only took 20 hours to complete. Whatever it is, you're able to do the math for them and tell them how you got to whatever number you're citing on your resume. Estimates are expected and they're acceptable. It's also okay to use broad terms. So you can say something like, you did a certain thing that ultimately saved the organization thousands of dollars. That's okay too. You're just pointing to the general result of it was a large savings, but I don't have a specific number for it. So you've got options there with how you're citing your metrics. But I do have on your handout, I have on your handout that numbers are king. And that is absolutely true. Every single recruiter and hiring manager that I've ever talked to about what they're looking for when they scan through a resume, numbers are at the top of the list. There's a number of different reasons for that. First off, they look at your resume for about 6 seconds on average. So that means you don't have a lot of time to capture their interest, and they don't have a lot of time to dive deep into understanding the value that you've delivered. When they see numbers, they think, specificity. That means this person's giving me some real tactical, tangible things that they have done. They're able to cite the specifics around it. Numbers jump off the page at someone when they're scanning through. You want to have some impressive numbers on there, some things that really show, maybe you were able to improve productivity by, 80%, whatever it is. If you can have some impressive numbers, that can make an immediate impression on the person who's looking at it. The last point on page 1 says, always start your accomplishment statements with an action verb. So your fill in the blank is the word action. You want to make sure that your accomplishment statements are in that action result metric formula, which means the action comes first. You should always be taking ownership of an action on your resume. An action verb like developed, created, improved, increased, initiated, led. All of those words are action verbs, and you should be taking ownership of that action. It should be the first word in every single bullet point. You should have an action verb right at the beginning. So I'll show you that on my resume. You can see it just over and over and over again, so you understand exactly what I'm talking about there. All right, I'm going to pause here, just check in on questions in the chat menu. We're done with page 1 of our handout. Oh, we have a question in the chat menu, which I'm going to get to before the end of today's session. It is in your handout, so we'll address it when the time comes. But go ahead and type questions in as they pop into your mind, and we'll make sure they all get addressed today. All right, let's talk about page 2 of your handout, which talks about keywords. So the definition for keywords, it's up at the top of the page, and it's pretty straightforward. Keywords are terms that human beings type into database systems to narrow down the pool of applicants. They're like search terms that you type into an internet search browser to narrow down the information on the web. So the thing you want to remember is that when you're submitting resumes these days, they're not going directly to a single individual in the organization. Instead, they are going into a great big pool. They're going into a database. So sometimes when an organization has a job posting online, there are thousands of resumes that get submitted and put into this pool. And the organization has to have a way to sort through all of those resumes. Thankfully, we have technology these days, and all those resumes are not in a physical pile. They're in an electronic database. So they can use key terms to filter out resumes that are the ones that are probably the best candidates. So if an organization, for example, was looking for a graphic designer, they might, go through their electronic pile of resumes and say, you know what, I only want to see the resumes that have the word Adobe Illustrator on them, because that's the system we use. And I want to make sure that our graphic designer knows how to use Adobe Illustrator. So they'd go to that system and they would pull out all of the resumes that have Adobe Illustrator on them. Most organizations have a list of key terms that they want to see on resumes for it to be a candidate who actually moves on and their resume actually gets seen by a human being. So the keyword process can happen immediately. So as soon as you submit your resume, the system already knows what keywords are really important, and it scans through and looks to see, okay, does this graphic designer have Adobe Illustrator on there? And if not, it checks you out. Your resume will never be seen by a human being. You might even get an immediate rejection email. If you've ever applied for a job online and like 2 seconds later, you get a rejection email, it's like, no one even looked at it. No one did. The keyword system just went through and said, oh, you're not a fit, and it automatically rejected you. So that's why it's so important to understand how keywords work. Keywords are, back to your handout, they are specifically related to the job, profession, and or industry. They are nouns or noun phrases. They define what you do, not necessarily how you do it. So back to the graphic design example here. So let me think. If you had on your resume that you were a creative illustrator, the organization would probably be looking for the word illustrator rather than the word creative. They are not looking at adjectives so much as they're looking for the thing that you do, or the special software that you use, or any specific terms that might be super relevant to your industry. I'm a corporate trainer, so in my resume, there's all sorts of terms that relate directly to the training industry. And some of those terms might not mean anything in other industries. A big thing for us is virtual instructor-led training, VILT. It wouldn't mean anything to another industry, but it can be a useful keyword. If I'm looking at a job that talks about needing a lot of virtual training, make sure that I've got that VILT information in my resume. That's a good keyword for me. All right, back to our handout here. According to the Society for Human Resource Management, or SHRM as they're known, 84% of organizations actively use online tools to find qualified candidates. So your fill in the blank there is 84%. That is a huge number of organizations using online tools. It also says here that that includes LinkedIn as well as other online job boards. LinkedIn is by far the most popular though. I mean, I'm talking like 96% of them are using LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is the database they're going to. And again, they're searching for keywords. They're trying to find people who have specific skills that they're looking for. Someone who's looking for a corporate trainer in the Denver area might type in, virtual instructor-led training, VILT, or they might type in curriculum design, any of the key terms that have to do with my industry. And I want to make sure that my profile and my resume have those keywords in there so my information pops up for them. So if you're going to put your resume on something like Career Builder or Monster.com, make sure you've got those keywords in there. So recruiters and hiring managers can find you that way. And recognize also that, LinkedIn is the better source. It's not that Career Builder and Monster and the other systems aren't worthwhile. I've found that typically when you have a resume on there, you get more sales calls from things like Monster and Career Builder. Insurance organizations will contact you and see if you want to become an insurance agent. But on LinkedIn, you actually get real good contacts from recruiters and hiring managers that actually, fit your skill set. All right, let's talk about the next item on your handout here. Approximately 74% of large organizations use applicant tracking software. 74%. Applicant tracking software is the system we were just talking about that scans through and looks for keywords, tosses you out if you don't have the right keywords, pulls you into a second pool if you do have the right keywords. 74% of large organizations use that. That's a big deal. We want to make sure that we are writing our resume for those systems as well as for human beings. The software filters out about 70% of resumes that are not deemed a possible match. So 70% of resumes don't get through to a human being ever. I know that some of the statistics can be a little discouraging, but don't allow it to discourage you. Let it encourage you to really understand how keywords are working and really taking some time to make sure that your resume is keyword rich. A strong resume should have about 25 to 35 keywords liberally distributed throughout. 25 to 35, that's your fill in the blank. So a question that people tend to ask is about, how do I know what keywords I should make sure that I have in my resume? So again, going back to your industry and your profession, you should know what those terms are that are most important for the work that you do, just based on your experience. You also, though, can look at the job description that you're applying for. They tell you right in there what's most important. Those are the key words, the nouns and noun phrases that they're talking about, the skills, the technology, the specific things that you will need to do. Though that's what they're looking for. They want to see those exact key terms in your resume. Don't get creative. Don't try to use different language that really means the same thing. Use their words. That's what they're looking for. They tell you in the job description. And then also, think like a recruiter. If you were a recruiter and you had a pile of thousands of resumes to sift through and find the perfect candidate, what terms would you say are most important for this candidate? What are those things that you'd be looking for as a recruiter to fill this job position? Make sure you've got those things on your resume. It's not an exact science, but it's pretty straightforward. Once you understand what it's all about, you can look at a job description and see exactly the things that they're talking about. Okay, make sure you got those words on your resume. And you want to have about 25 to 35 of them. So liberally distributed throughout. All right. So let's jump on to the 10 resume writing mistakes that you want to avoid. These are the things that I see over and over again. And some of them you might have heard before, but I put them on here anyway, because it never ceases to amaze me that things I think everyone knows, a lot of people don't know. And I want to make sure that you do. All right, the first one is do not use the word I. You should not be using any sort of pronouns to refer to yourself. The standard resume convention is not to use I at all. It should be written in what I like to call a disembodied first person voice. So your example and the second bullet under number 1 says, instead of I created a new filing system, you would just say created a new filing system. So hopefully you understand how that works, that disembodied first person voice. If you're saying created a new filing system, first off, great, because you've got the action verb at the very beginning, created. You're talking about the new filing system, but remember, result in metric. So created a new filing system, resulting in decreased retrieval time for files by 50%, whatever it is. Make sure you fill out the thought. It's not just the action. You've got to have the result in the metric as well. The second point says to use a career objective, not to use a career objective, sorry, but to use a branding statement instead. This one is really important, and it's a very common misunderstanding because career objective used to be used all the time in the past. It was the first thing you'd see on a resume. Objective, to find the perfect job that pays a lot of money and work with people I love. Obviously I'm being a little bit silly there, but the objective was always something really broad, talking about what the person who was writing the resume wanted, which is obvious. You want the job. That's why you're creating the resume. So objective has started to be seen as really antiquated. It's old school. The new school thing to do is have a branding statement where instead of talking about what you want, you're talking about what you offer, who you are, and why you would be a great asset to that organization. That should be the first thing that the person reviewing the resume sees. So you'll see that in my sample coming up in just a minute. The third mistake is focusing on duties and responsibilities and not accomplishments. So I wanted to give you some tricks that I use to just verify if you are looking at accomplishments or if you're looking at duties and responsibilities. If you have the words responsible for on your resume, it indicates that you're not talking about accomplishments. You're talking about a responsibility. So if you say responsible for managing the calendar of executives, that is a responsibility. It's not talking about something great that you did with that responsibility. So you might want to say something, I'm going off the top of my head here, but if you're saying you want to talk about the fact that you handle executive calendar management, you would want to say, successfully managed complicated executive calendars resulting in all executives maintaining on-time schedule, whatever it is, but you're able to identify something that was important for the organization that was the result of that calendar management you did. The fourth mistake is making a lot of cliche or generic statements. So talking about being an out-of-the-box thinker, talking about being a go-getter, those things just tend to be meaningless for most people, and resumes, you have limited space, so use your words wisely. The fifth mistake is not creating a targeted, customized resume for each role that you're applying for. Make sure that you customize your resume every single time that you submit it. It should be something that you become really comfortable with doing on a regular basis. I always say you should have a master resume, and it should be updated for every application. Anytime you write a new bullet point, put that bullet point in another master document. So you've got all those different bullet points that you've written over time, and you can pull them out and add them and subtract them as needed. But if you're looking at a job description and you're going to submit your resume for it, you should make sure that everything it says on that job description, you talk about it in your resume. You have a bullet point that addresses everything they've said is so important to them. You should never be just submitting a generic resume that's not speaking directly to what they told you they want. All right, I want to go through these fast because I'm seeing a lot of questions. The sixth mistake, using too many words or repeating words. I don't need to say any more. You guys get that one. Just keep it tight. You have limited space. Listing everything you've ever done in your career. So this is one question that I think was floating around in the chat menu. Your resume is a marketing document. It is not meant to be a complete and comprehensive history of your employment in the past. The standard convention is to go back 10 years. If you have a position that is really, really a great match for this position that you're applying for, but you held it like 15, 20 years ago, and you'd like to put it on your resume, you can include it. I'll show you where I include older items on my resume, but I want you to remember, After 10 years, a lot of organizations don't consider it relevant experience because technology changes. Everything has changed so much in the last 10 years. Anything beyond that, and it doesn't really apply as much anymore. So they care about your most recent 10 years because that's what our world is. We're moving so quickly. Everything changes so fast. The position that you were in 15, 20 years ago really is probably not like whatever new position you get. Number 8 is including irrelevant or inappropriate information like hobbies, family situation, religious or political affiliations. I hope most of you already know this. The question that comes up sometimes is people will say, I volunteered for a political party and it showed leadership experience and it showed some other skills that I'd like to demonstrate on my resume. How can I put that in there? Just use general descriptors in that case. So just say a political party. You could say a national political campaign, but I wouldn't say what affiliation that is. There's just no reason to go there. It's unnecessary and it can be a turnoff on either side of the coin there. The number 9 is not using bullet points is a mistake. So big blocks of text is an immediate turnoff. If recruiters see big blocks of text throughout your resume, they don't want to read it. They don't want to decipher it. They want bullet points. Make it easy and scannable for them. Remember that people are used to like constantly scrolling their mouse. They're used to constant movement on the screen. They want to be able to read quickly and understand what they're reading. Big blocks of text are so, they're just a turnoff for everyone. And then the last one is over embellishing with fonts and styling tools. I think a lot of people get really inspired to go super creative with their resume, and it can end up looking very unprofessional. So stay away from too much stuff. Never use things like clip art. Never use cutesy fonts like Comic Sans or Lucinda handwriting. Those are completely not professional looking. And they also don't really translate over well on a lot of computers. So stick to just keeping it clean, simple, and professional. All right. I am going to check in on questions because I'm seeing a ton happening. And then I also want to show you my resume and just talk through a few more final points. Okay, how many pages should a resume be? 2 pages for the experienced professional is acceptable. No more than 2 pages is ever acceptable on a resume. If we're talking about a CV in Europe, those things can be longer. They can also have some more personal embellishments. I'm talking about a North America resume. 2 pages is absolute max. If you have to stretch to reach 2 pages, shrink instead and stay on 1 page. When reading a job posting, is it good practice to always modify your resume to include keywords in the posting? Absolutely, every single time, Karen. Next question. How many years should be reflected on the resume? As I said, don't go back further than 10 years. It's irrelevant. Question from Karen. Just to confirm, so you recommend using LinkedIn for posting your resume more than other sites instead? I receive a lot of spam type of emails when I post my resume online. Yes, Karen. LinkedIn is the gold standard. I find that when people post their resumes on CareerBuilder and Monster and even Indeed, it just tends to spark those spam emails more than the really targeted inquiries. LinkedIn has targeted inquiries. I mean, I get messages about training and curriculum design jobs all the time that are real inquiries. They've looked at my profile, they know my skill set and are interested in me, versus on CareerBuilder and such, they just are reaching out to anybody and everybody because they're salespeople trying to get you to come join Affleck or something. Okay. Jennifer says, if 84% use online tools and job boards, how does that match with 75 to 85% of job seekers who land a job because they were connected or network into the role? You can be connected or network into the role outside of social media or online tools. So if my best friend knows that I'm really great at curriculum design and she introduces me to her organization to come in and have a job interview, that's a connection that has happened through connection and networking outside of social media. So 84% of recruiters are looking at job boards to source candidates, but they're still open to having an introduction. If they look online and they find somebody, they'll make a connection right there themselves. So I hope that answers the question, Jennifer. I don't think those numbers are in conflict at all. Loretta says, a strong resume should have how many keywords liberally distributed throughout? Donna was right there on it, 25 to 35 keywords. Thanks, Donna. All right, Karen, what if you work in a field where the use of numbers or metrics isn't easy to document on your resume? How do you know how much more efficient the filing system you created is? Great question, Karen. I get this all the time, especially from administrative professionals, which I said at the beginning of the session, I work with a ton of admins. It is possible to create some metrics for yourself. So if you're talking about how much more efficient the filing system you created is, back to that estimating. So you would think about, okay, estimated how much time did we spend filing or finding files before I color coded the system? How much time reasonably do I think we spend now? Approximation probably saved us about, maybe 2 hours a week. So do the math out. What does that work out to in terms of time savings or increase in productivity? It's perfectly fine to just estimate and kind of guess at what those numbers would look like. If it's really truly impossible to define a metric associated, still point to the result, like we were talking about with managing complicated calendars. So if you manage complicated calendars that involve international travel and things, you can say that it resulted in stress-free international travel for your executive. That's a result. It might not be a money or a metric result, but it's a result nonetheless that it points to. You want your action to have at least the result, if not also the number metric associated with it. Hope that's helpful, Karen. Okay, I'm going to take a few more questions and we'll jump into the sample resume. Robin says, I've been with my current employer for just over 10 years, but have more than 20 years of experience in the field. Do I just list the current employer or should I include previous employers as well? I'll show you what I would do. Your current employer should be the one that you have the most information about because those current skills are what they care about. But since you've got more time in the field, you could also include that in a smaller way. You don't want to blow it out with a ton of accomplishment statements from 20 years ago, but you could just cite that you also have this relevant experience, that shows you've been in the field for 20 years. I'll show you on my resume where that is. Karen says, this is probably best covered in another webinar, but how much, if any, content from your resume should be mentioned on your cover letter? Cover letters are a different beast. I recommend that you do one, but I also don't recommend that you spend a huge amount of time on them. Do not just repeat what's on your resume. Make your cover letter a unique document and try to identify some either accomplishment from your resume that you can expand on because it's really, really relevant to this role. Try to talk about why this organization sparks your interest, why you're really passionate about your field. There's so many other things that cover letters should address that aren't in your resume. But you're right, it probably is better for another webinar. Lee says, is it necessary to list a job on a resume where one was laid off and had a very bad experience? This might cause a negative reference. No, you don't have to list it. Recognize that if you don't list it, though, you might show an employment gap, and you're going to need to probably account for that gap unless the job was super short term and it could not be seen and visible in the years on your resume. But you don't have to list anything. It's a marketing document. It doesn't have to be like legally every single thing you've ever done in a time period. Donna says, I have a side box succinctly listing keywords and software expertise. Is box format old style and not scannable? Yes, Donna. Box format in a resume looks really nice on a printed resume, but those boxes are potentially not going to be scanned by the applicant tracking software. So as much as possible, you want to just keep your resume format as clean as it can be. Text boxes and tables should be avoided for that reason. Great question, Donna. Thank you. Donna again says, Chrissy, just to clarify, I do have a bullet pointed resume. The box is an addition. Yeah, I would still get rid of it because it's not really adding anything to the scanned value. You can keep it though if you want to print off a really pretty resume to take in for your in-person interviews. You can have that and it'll make a great impression because it's nice to look at and it's very creative. It's reiterating the same content as the more, simply formatted one that you submitted through the electronic system, but it's just prettier for human beings to look at. Next question, should we mention, even as a bundle, education such as webinars, assistant resources, books read? I like this. Yeah, so this person has engaged in some training, some ongoing professional development training, and the question about whether or not to mention it. If you have the room in your education section, you can certainly add in that you regularly attend professional development trainings and seminars, and you could include maybe some of the key things that you've participated in or the key topics that you have shown a special interest in. You could calculate the number of hours you've done over the past few years. Anything like that would be great. All right, last question before I show you my resume. Is it a problem if you submit a resume tailored to the job description? Is it okay to post a general resume on LinkedIn? Yes, LinkedIn is expected to be your kind of master template. And then you're customizing all of your information as you submit to specific descriptions. Hiring managers and recruiters understand that. They recognize that your LinkedIn is what it is and you can't change it for every application. So they know that's perfectly acceptable. Okay, I am going to share my screen and hopefully there is no problem here. And I'm going to show you my resume really quickly. Let's see here. Is everyone seeing my my resume? The system looks very strange to me right now. I'm going to try this one more time. Okay, it looks like this is very strange for me and the screen share is not working properly today. I'm not able to actually scan on this document for some reason. All I can do is just see the top of the document. So this is the top of the document. What I'll do is I will ask you, let's see here. Sorry, everyone, give me 1 minute while I see if I can get this to actually work here. Yeah, I'm seeing some people who are letting me know. I do know it's blown up, but it's like an image on my screen. So I'm not able to change anything. I can't reduce the size. I appreciate the troubleshooting help in chat, but I can't do anything. it's stuck on this and it won't let me scan. So it is what it is. I'm going to walk you through what the resume shows. If you can pull up the resume in another tab on your internet, that would be great. And I will show you different aspects of it. I'll kind of walk you through it. At the top here, you can see I've got my information here. This is the branding statement where it says career coach and professional development trainer. That is the top thing that I want people to see when they're looking at my resume. Beneath that is the branding statement that goes into a little more detail about my specific expertise. I am a huge fan of making sure that you have included in this area something about results. So you can see here that in the second line, it ends with resulting in measurable improvements in performance, productivity, engagement, and turnover. That is something that I want to really point out to whoever's reading this, that I can cite measurable improvements in my training and development. Beneath that, you can see areas of excellence. These are my keyword lists here. I've got a 3-column list of keywords. These keywords are also distributed liberally throughout my resume in other areas. So, thank you. I am going to turn off. We're going to try this one more time. You can see the screen now. I can actually move it around because someone was kind enough to put the link in chat for me. So I just pulled up the link, and hopefully at this point you can now see me moving around on the screen. I'm going to keep talking through it. If for some reason the screen isn't working the way I'm expecting it to be working, you can follow along on your handout. So underneath my keyword list, which was 3 columns, I also have my summary and achievements broken down by my different organizations that I've worked for, starting with my own organization. But I've listed it as if it's just a regular employment here. You can see every single accomplishment statement starts with an action verb. You could see that as much as possible, I've tried to cite numbers here. 6 months, 70% advancement rate, 100% attendee satisfaction rate. As much as possible, I'm giving a result. Even here, I couldn't cite specific numbers, but I just said resulting in hundreds of business leads and expanded brand recognition. That's just a very broad generalization, but it's still talking about what the result was. As you go through this, you'll be able to see the action result metric formula in use on almost every single bullet point. I don't think that there were many that I wasn't able to cite some sort of a result, even if I couldn't tie a specific metric to it. Down at the bottom on the second page, you can see additional relevant experience. This is where I've listed other organizations and roles that I've held. To the person who said that she had some experience from 20 years ago that's still in the same field and she wants to list it, this is how you could do it. And under additional relevant experience, you wouldn't want to necessarily blow it out with all the bullet points, but you could still list it here. Certifications and professional development I have listed here along with education. You'll notice that I don't include dates. Dates are not necessary. Dates can age you inappropriately. So they're not required, and I personally do not include them, and I don't recommend that you do either. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to get back on screen to actually, yeah, I'll stop sharing. Worked. Let me know in chat if that worked. I want to tell you about a few final things before we wrap up. I do have a few resources for you. So the Job Seeker Career Bundle is a great option for you. If you are a member of the Career Resources Library, which everyone on here should be, you can go under discounts. And up at the top, you've got some product discounts. You get a great discount on the Job Seeker bundle. And that gives you my resume and cover letter toolkit, which includes templates and much more specific training on everything that we talked about today. It also includes a Rock Your Interview guide as well, so that you're nice and prepared for interviews that come up. And so you can grab the Job Seeker bundle if you're interested. On that same discounts page in the library, you've got a discount on resume and cover letter services in the summertime. So that ends next month. If you're interested in having me help you out with your resume, you get a great discount right now. I would take advantage of it if you're going to be revising your resume in the next year, because you can hang on to your services for up to a year. You don't have to use it right now. You don't have to use it in the summer months. You can just purchase it now and get your discount, and then we can work together whenever you're ready. So those are the big things that you can take advantage of to continue your learning and continue growing with this particular topic of resume writing. I'm going to jump back on, and you're welcome to stay a few extra minutes. I know we're right up against time, but I want to check and see if we have some more questions I can answer while we're here. Okay, so Diane was asking, it's centered, not flush left. I assume you're talking about the top of my resume. Yes, it's centered. It's not flush left. Flush left is for all of the employment history that starts at the second half of the first page. It's a format preference. I really love the format that I use on my resume. I use this frequently with clients. I also use another common format. Both of the templates that are my two favorites are included in the resume and cover letter toolkit in the Job Seeker bundle if you're interested in grabbing those. Thanks, Liberty, for dropping my resume link in there. That really helped. Karen asks, is there a bank of keywords somewhere? What about the skills area on LinkedIn? Would those work as keywords? No, there's not a bank of keywords somewhere. And I would just truly look at job descriptions in your field and pull keywords that way, and always modify them based on the job that you're applying for. I wouldn't rely on LinkedIn's database. I personally haven't found it to be very compelling. But if you see some there that are useful that you want to add to your keyword database, go for it. Diane says, lists work better than text box or table. Yes, they do. Susan says, periods after bullet points, is that a preference to add or not? Great question. I used to add periods at the end of bullet points all the time. And then I actually had my advisor, I do some consulting for an organization here in Denver. We help people who have been laid off. We create resumes for them. And my advisor over there told me not to add bullets at the end of, not to add periods at the end of bullet points. I had not heard that before, but he said standard convention. So I've stopped adding bullets or periods to the end of my bullets. I think it's a preference though. I don't think any recruiter or hiring manager would say, oh, we can't look at that because she's got periods there. Let's see here. Next question, is it appropriate to include professional associations or awards on a resume? Absolutely. Those are great things to include. Are certifications really worth the money? Angela, great question, but off topic, and we're going to have to save it for another time. I do have an article on my website that talks about if certifications are worth the money. So check it out. It was just posted a couple of weeks ago. All right. It looks like nothing else is specifically listed as a question, but we've got a lot of great feedback from everybody. I'm going to review the chat menu later on my own. I downloaded the chat from our last session because there was a lot of great reference tools and resources. I think you guys liked that, so I'll do it again this time so you have this chat reference as well. I feel like I've been talking so much, so fast for an hour. I hope that you have found this helpful. I really thank you so much for being here today. Thanks to everybody who's saying such kind things in the chat menu. And we will meet up again, hopefully, this same time next month. We will do our Q&A in just a couple of weeks for the month of August, believe it or not. We'll also do another training webinar like this one next month on, I believe, we're going to talk about setting limits and managing expectations in the workplace. So thank you, everyone. I am so happy you were here. All right. Take care, guys. Bye.